I'm pretty good at. 2 years ago, when the Arab Spring broke out, I warned you that the 26-year-old rebel from Tunisia who lit himself on fire was the guy I thought who was the guy I had been looking for a few years, because I had been looking for a repeat of the Archduke Ferdinand that would kick off global conflict. Watch.
I said at some point there is going to be an Archduke Ferdinand moment. And it will be something that the world dismisses, and most likely you will dismiss at first. And then it will snowball. I believe Tunisia is the Archduke Ferdinand moment. I could be wrong.
There has been something that I have told you for a while now that is coming, and this is one of them. And after I told you this, the revolutionary storm cascaded across the Middle East, and I believe historians will look back and identify the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand in the summer of 1914, as they do as the breakout of the First World War. And this guy who set himself on fire as the beginning of a global conflict. And events like these are watershed moments in history. But I will tell you that I've been telling you about another event in history for a while now. And I said, watch for this. And I actually told you that I felt it made me feel good, because I didn't think we were close to it. Because I was doing some research on history, and I was like, whew, we're a long way away from that. I believe it happened last week. And when we started looking into history this morning, after doing all of our homework, I opened up this box, and I recognized it, and I went, oh crap. Oh crap. It is the movement and the moment that I feared would come, that I thought we were a long way away from. But there's a blessing and a curse, and it depends on what we decide to do with it. Events like these generally mark the start of some global catastrophe, but they can also mark great things to come. And the marking that we are going to compare tonight, we're going to compare it to this, Senator Rand Paul's speech. I told you last week that I had a sense that this was really an important moment, more important than anybody really thought. I believe historians will look back in 100 years and say, this speech ignited a global freedom movement. Now, that movement has been going for a while, so why is this so special? History will tell us. I went last week on Thursday, and I tried to find that repeat of history. What is this? David Barton knew immediately. He said, oh, I know what it is. It's striking, and quite frankly, a little frightening. Because if you are a long-time viewer, I did say, watch for this moment. It will mean trouble. Now, it didn't come to us exactly the same way. But I'm going to let you decide that, because there is a striking difference. So do we use it as a marker to predict the same outcome, or half the outcome, or is it the same? I'll explain and then let you decide in just a minute. Eileen, will you take this? We'll look at that outcome and you decide. First, let me take you to the turn of last century, when the progressive movement infected the Republican Party first, turning it into just a lighter version of the pro-slavery Democrat Party. You see, the pro-slavery party was Margaret Sanger, who wanted to eliminate the unfit from the human race through abortion. Those were blacks, according to her. Or the pro-slavery party of Woodrow Wilson, which is the Democrats, who debuted Birth of a Nation as the first motion picture. Birth of a Nation. It wasn't really Birth of a Nation, unless you considered that nation the Klan. This was the first film ever debuted in the White House, and it was from Woodrow Wilson, something that glorified the Klan. The party responsible for the urban utopias that have become Detroit or Philadelphia, or now it seems Atlanta. Back before the turn of the century, it was really easy to tell the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. But now there's barely a difference between the two parties. That's why this moment last week was so important. I'm going to look at Rand Paul's speech here on Wednesday, and I want you to really understand what happened, because you will see it later on when I show you history. I think we're on the brink of finding a cure to the cancer that infected first the GOP. You see, during the election of 1901, Teddy Roosevelt gets in, and what he brought in infected our entire country ever since. A new alliance has been born. And it was born last week. Rand Paul, he had no other power than the filibuster. And even that really didn't mean anything, because it can only do one thing: wake the American people up by grabbing them by the collar and showing them that their constitutional rights are being violated. And so at 11:47 Wednesday morning last week, that's exactly what he did. He grabbed the American people by the collar, and he began an epic 13-hour filibuster against the president, who declared his right as executioner-in-chief to kill American citizens on our soil without any due process of law. Now, let me rephrase that. He didn't declare it. He just would not deny it. He would not write a simple phrase, and he's been asked for weeks, can somebody write one phrase and say, the president cannot do this? The answer was no. So here's what Rand Paul did.
I've decided to occupy as much time as I can on the floor to bring attention. Ultimately, I can't win. There's not enough votes. There would be if truly there was an uprising of bipartisan support who would come to the floor and say, you know what? It's not really about John Brennan. It's about a constitutional principle. And we're willing to delay this until the president can explicitly answer that non-combatants in America won't be killed with drone strikes.
This is really quite simple. That's all you had to do. Remember, our president is not only a Harvard and Columbia educated man, but he's also a self-described scholar of the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights is really pretty easy. There it is, one page. It's not a complex document. And anyone in the president's position would know that drones would violate at least 4 articles of the Bill of Rights. That's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's one page. You're violating almost 50% of it. But for some reason, he wouldn't answer the question. Now, some might say, well, it's not even worthy because he's not going to... No. This is a serious question. And it's one that really begs an answer. As I told you at the beginning of the show, this is a watershed moment. But for what? Last week, what happened with Rand Paul was not about drones. Oh, it might have started out there, but that's not where it's going to end. I believe part of it was just the beginning of the end of the old guard for at least the Republican establishment, the end of the Republican progressives, which would make them effectively into the Whig Party. I'll explain in a minute and show you the historic ties to this. But it's the Republicans that are progressive Republicans that I'm referring to when I say the death of the GOP, the John McCains and the Lindsey Grahams of the party. They are being torn down from their thrones, and they know it. And that's why they are actively trying to destroy Senator Rand Paul.
He's saying now that he wants this president to tell him that he will not use a drone to kill an American citizen sitting in a cafe having a cup of coffee, who is not a combatant. I find the question offensive. I do not believe that question deserves an answer.
If Mr. Paul wants to be taken seriously, he needs to do more than pull political stunts that fire up impressionable libertarian kids in their college dorms. I saw colleagues of mine who know better come to the floor and voice this same concern, which is totally unfounded.
Okay, I've never seen this happen before in my lifetime. I've never seen senators from the same party try to eviscerate somebody else. Never seen it. It struck me as very odd, and it continued over the weekend. And then today, Bill Kristol came out and wrote a piece. Now, Bill Kristol's not exactly a favorite of this program, seeing that he's wrong, I don't know, what time is it? All the time. Here he is, he comes out and he starts punching Rand Paul as well. He calls him the head of the Code Pink wing of the Republican Party. Here's what he wrote. Paul's political genius strikes us as very much of the same short-term variety. Will it ultimately serve him well to be the spokesman for the Code Pink faction of the Republican Party by standing by the Constitution? How much power is there in a political stance that requires waxing semi-hysterically about the imminent threat of an Obama-ordered drone strikes against Americans sitting in cafes? Well, the only thing you have to add to this to make this accurate is, put on American soil, because Obama has already ordered drone strikes against Americans sitting in cafes, just not on our soil. And was he hysterical, semi-hysterical? Luckily for us, and if you watch this program, you know, if Bill Kristol supports something, then you've got to run for your life away from it. He's wrong about everything. But he's a progressive Republican, old guard. That's why. Rand Paul was anything but extreme and hysterical. He didn't make any personal remarks or take any blows like that to anybody. He talked about the Constitution an awful lot. And if that's what makes you a radical in today's America, then we truly have forgotten who we are and where we're headed. Our future, however, does not belong to the people in Washington, especially the old guard. Things have changed, and things are continuing to change. Our lives and our rights, as they always have, belong to us, and not some bureaucrat on either side of the aisle in Washington. Each of us has the right to protect ourselves and our families. We have a right to be secure in our home, our persons, our belongings. We have a right and a responsibility to guard and protect our own property and our future. But there are those progressives that don't believe that. And notice how they're limiting your access to protection. This is what's striking once people put this together. At the same time that the world is becoming a more unstable and a more dangerous place, at the same time that almost any economist worth his salt who is honest at all, anybody who disagrees with Paul Krugman, they will tell you that we're expecting a large bump in the road here economically. We're expecting food shortages. You already have cities, Detroit, you have it in California, you have it in New Jersey, where they can't pay their police officers. And at the same time that that's happening, they're limiting your right to protect yourself. Is that happenstance? You can't have a gun that fires more than 10 rounds at a time. They're limiting you, but they're at the same time won't answer a question about a new drone. I mean, this is not something unreasonable. Drones up above our cities, targeting our citizens, that's a new thing. It's becoming far too clear for far too many people. None of this is accidental. And so what we're seeing now are two coalitions take hold. The first one is big government progressives and plus, that's Democrats and Republicans, that will protect their institutionalized power and those who want even more. And then the smaller government people,